Owen stood frozen in the dirt, pointing toward the corner of the trading post, his small hand steady, his voice quiet but certain. "Father," he said, "that's Mother." Harrison's heart stopped. His wife had been dead for 3 years, buried, mourned, gone, but there she sat, alive, holding a cloth doll, rocking back and forth, humming a broken song. She looked up at him with empty eyes. "Do I know you?" The Wyoming dawn came slow and cold, bleeding pale light across the Grant ranch like a wound opening in the dark. Harrison Grant stood on the porch of his white farmhouse boots, planted wide, one hand wrapped around a mug of black coffee. No sugar, no cream, no softness. The steam rose and vanished in the autumn air, and he watched it disappear the way he watched most things now, with distance, with control. 5,000 acres spread before him in rolling waves of sagebrush and dry grass, fenced and marked and mapped in his mind like a ledger he could balance. The distant mountains cut the horizon into teeth. The wind carried the smell of earth and cattle and the faint metallic taste of coming winter. This was his kingdom. This was what remained when everything else had been taken. A man who controls his land can control his life. That was what his father had taught him before the old man's heart gave out in the south pasture, dropping him between the fence posts like a sack of grain. Harrison had been 12. He learned fast that grief was a luxury and work was salvation. Keep moving, keep building, keep your hands busy and your heart locked away. For 20 years he had done exactly that, built the ranch from a struggling 200 acres into an empire, married the only woman who ever made him lose control, had a son, lost the woman, kept working. It was a simple equation, and Harrison Grant believed in simple equations. Behind him, the screen door creaked. Harrison did not turn. "Father," the voice was small, careful. "Church is at 9. "I know. We should leave at 8:30. "We will." Owen Grant stepped onto the porch, 7 years old and small for his age, wearing his Sunday clothes already pressed and buttoned. His brown hair would not stay flat no matter how much water Harrison smoothed into it that morning. The boy held a wooden horse in one hand, turning it over and over like a worry stone. His mother had carved it for him when he was 3, a few months before the accident. That was 4 years ago. That was before everything changed. Harrison glanced at his son. The boy's face was too serious, too careful eyes scanning his father's expression for permission to exist. Harrison recognized that look. He had worn it himself at 12, standing over his father's grave, learning that men do not cry where others can see. "Eat your breakfast," Harrison said. "Then we go." Inside the house was clean and cold, everything in its place. Boots lined by the door, coats on hooks. The kitchen table set with 2 plates, 2 forks, 2 glasses of water. There had been 3 once. The third chair remained at the table empty and accusatory. Harrison had tried moving it to the attic. Owen had asked where Mother's chair went. Harrison brought it back down. The boy cooked breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, 4 strips of bacon. He was good at it. Too good. Harrison watched him work the stove with the efficiency of someone twice his age, someone who had learned to fend for himself while his father turned to stone. They ate in silence. The only sounds were forks on plates, and the old house settling around them like a dying animal making its final arrangements. Through the window, Harrison could see the barn where Daniel Pierce, his foreman, was already working. Daniel was a good man, loyal, quiet, the kind of man who understood that some silences were not meant to be filled. Harrison's eyes drifted to the empty chair. For 3 years he had stared at it every morning. For 3 years it had stared back. Eliza had sat there with her coffee and her laughter and her endless questions about his day. She had filled the kitchen with warmth the way a stove fills a room with heat. You do not know what warmth is until it leaves. Then you spend your life shivering. "Father," Owen's voice cut through the quiet. "We should go." Harrison blinked. His eggs were cold. He had not touched them. He stood, cleared the table, washed the dishes with methodical precision. Every plate scrubbed, every fork dried. Control in the small things because the large things were beyond him. They walked to the truck. Ford F-150, 10 years old, covered in the fine dust of Carbon County roads. Harrison drove. Owen sat beside him, wooden horse clutched in both hands. The boy stared out the window at the fence posts flying past, counting them under his breath. 1, 2, 3. Eliza used to do that. Harrison's hands tightened on the wheel. Sweetwater was 15 miles from the ranch, a town of 287 souls that clung to the Wyoming landscape like a barnacle on a dying whale. Main Street ran 4 blocks. The church sat at the eastern end, white wood and a brass bell. The trading post sat at the western end, where the boardwalk gave way to dirt. Between them, the town did what small towns do. It watched. It whispered. It remembered. Harrison parked in front of the Sweetwater Community Church. The building had stood for 80 years, weathered by wind and faith in equal measure. The bell was already ringing, calling the faithful and the faithless alike. People climbed the steps in their Sunday clothes, smiling and nodding, performing the ritual of community. Harrison did not smile. He nodded once to Reverend Samuel Hart, who stood at the door with his Bible and his knowing eyes. "Harrison," the Reverend said. "Owen." "Reverend," Harrison replied. They did not linger. Harrison led Owen inside and to the 3rd row on the right. They had sat there for 3 years. Before that, they had sat in the 1st row. But after Eliza was gone, Harrison moved them back. Punishment, perhaps, or shame. He was not sure which, and did not examine it closely. The church filled around them. Mrs. Patterson, the schoolteacher, with her gray bun and her sharp eyes. Old Harold from the general store, whittling a piece of wood even as he walked. Ruth Kimball, who ran the small shop 2 doors down from the trading post, her round face flushed from hurrying. She caught Harrison's eye and started toward him, mouth opening as if to speak. Harrison looked away. Ruth stopped. She understood. The service began. Reverend Hart climbed to the pulpit, opened his Bible, and began to speak about Lazarus. About a man who had been dead and buried and yet walked again. About faith that moves stones and calls the dead from their graves. His voice filled the church like water filling a well. "Sometimes," the Reverend said, and his eyes seemed to find Harrison in the 3rd row, "we bury the living before they are truly gone. We dig graves with our doubts, we lay flowers on tombs that are empty, and we walk away believing we have done all we can." Harrison sat rigid. His jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. Beside him, Owen glanced up, watching his father's face the way children watch storm clouds, looking for the moment lightning will strike. Harrison did not move. He barely breathed. The Reverend's words landed like stones in his chest, piling higher and higher until he could not draw air. The service ended. People stood stretched, began the slow migration toward the door and the sunlight beyond. Women gathered around Owen, cooing and asking questions with the false brightness adults use when they pity children. "How are you, sweetheart? You've grown so much. Are you taking care of your father?" Owen answered each one with the same polite efficiency. "Yes, ma'am." "Fine, ma'am." "Thank you, ma'am." Harrison stood apart. People approached him carefully, the way one approaches a wounded animal that might bite. They asked their questions. "How are things?" "Mr. Grant." "Is the ranch doing well?" "Do you need anything?" Harrison gave them, "Nothing." "Fine. Yes. No." One-word answers that closed doors before they could open. Ruth Kimball tried again. She stepped into his path, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. "Harrison, please. I need to talk to you. It's important." "Not today, Ruth." "It's about something you need to know." "I said not today." Her face fell. She opened her mouth, closed it, and stepped aside. Harrison walked past her, Owen trailing behind. He did not see the way Ruth's eyes followed them, filled with something that looked like desperation. He did not hear her whisper to the woman beside her, "He still doesn't know." Outside, the sun was high and white, turning the September air into something you could taste. Dust hung in the light. The smell of baking bread drifted from the small bakery across the street. Harrison and Owen walked down Main Street toward the truck. It was the same walk they made every Sunday. Past the general store where old Harold sat whittling on the porch. Past the blacksmith shop where the hammer rang against iron, even on the Sabbath, steady as a heartbeat. Past the small cluster of women who stood near Ruth's shop, talking in voices that went quiet when Harrison passed. Harrison heard them the way he heard wind, background noise, not his concern. He was already thinking about the work waiting at the ranch, the north fence that needed mending before winter, the cattle prices that had dropped 3% this week, the feed order he needed to place with the supplier in Cheyenne. These were problems a man could solve. These were problems that stayed in line if you stayed hard. Beside him, Owen slowed. Harrison did not notice at first. His boots hit the dirt with purpose, each step measured and deliberate. He was past the blacksmith shop, past the last of the storefronts, approaching the rougher end of town, where men without steady work leaned against walls and smoked and watched the world with eyes that had seen too much and expected too little. Then he felt the space beside him go empty, the absence of small footsteps, the silence where Owen's breathing should have been. Harrison stopped, turned. Owen stood 10 feet behind him, planted in the dirt like a fence post, staring toward the side of the trading post. The wooden horse hung forgotten in his hand. His face was still unnaturally still, the kind of stillness that comes before earthquakes. "Owen," Harrison's voice carried an edge. "Come on, we have work waiting." The boy did not move. "Boy." Harrison took a step toward him. "I said come on." Owen lifted his face. His eyes were not afraid. They were not confused. They were certain, clear, focused on something Harrison could not yet see. The boy's small hand rose and pointed toward the corner of the trading post where the boardwalk ended and the dirt began. "Father," Owen said quietly. The word hung in the hot air like smoke. "That's Mother." The street seemed to stop. The wind, the hammer from the blacksmith's shop, the distant lowing of cattle. Everything went silent, as if the world itself was holding its breath to see what Harrison Grant would do with the impossible thing his son had just said. Harrison's lungs seized. His heart slammed against his ribs once, twice, then seemed to stop entirely. The coffee in his stomach turned to acid. His vision tunneled. For a moment he could not move, could not think, could only hear those 3 words repeating in his mind like a bell tolling. "That's Mother." "What did you say?" Owen did not answer. He kept pointing, his hand steady, his face calm with the terrible certainty only a child can carry when they see the truth adults refuse to see. Harrison forced himself to breathe, forced his legs to move. He followed the line of his son's finger, and his eyes found the corner of the trading post. A woman sat there on the ground, her back against the weathered wood. She wore an old coat too big for her frame, the sleeves hanging past her hands. Her hair was dark with streaks of gray that caught the light like silver threads. In her arms she held a cloth doll, lumpy and shapeless, stitched from scraps of faded fabric. She rocked forward and back, humming a tune that had no words. The sound was broken, fragmented, a song remembered wrong. Harrison's throat closed. His mind tried to reject what his eyes were showing him. The woman was too thin, too tired, too far gone to be the person his son claimed to see. His wife had been strong, warm, alive. His wife had been dead for 3 years. Buried, mourned, forgotten, not forgotten, never forgotten, but gone. Gone was the same as dead when you had stopped looking. "Your mother is dead," Harrison said, and his voice was harsh, brutal, as if he could cut truth into place with the sharpness of his words. "You know that." Owen did not flinch. He turned his head and looked at his father with eyes too old for 7 years. "No, sir," the boy said. "You stopped searching." The words hit Harrison like a fist to the gut, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. 6 months. He had searched the river for 6 months, dragged every bank, checked every downstream mile, interviewed every person who might have seen something, found nothing but a shawl caught on a branch and a preacher's gentle voice saying, "Sometimes the water doesn't give them back." So Harrison had stopped. He had buried an empty coffin. He had told his 4-year-old son that Mommy was in heaven now. He had locked the grief away in a room in his chest and never opened the door again. That was survival. That was strength. Wasn't it Harrison's boots began to move? One step, then another. His pulse hammered in his ears. The woman on the ground kept rocking, kept humming, oblivious to the man approaching her like he was walking through a dream. 10 feet became 5. 5 became 3. Harrison stopped. Up close he could see her face, gaunt, hollow-cheeked, skin weathered by sun and cold and time. But the shape of her jaw, the curve of her nose, the way her hair fell across her shoulders, and there, running from her left temple down to her cheekbone, a thin white scar. Harrison knew that scar. He had held her hand while the doctor stitched it closed. She was 16. He was 21. A spooked horse had thrown her against a fence rail and split her skin wide. She had cried and squeezed his hand so hard his fingers went numb, and he had told her she would be fine. She would be fine, even though his own hands were shaking and his stomach was in his throat. That scar was on Eliza Grant's face. It had been there for 22 years. And now it was here on this woman sitting in the dirt by the trading post like a ghost made flesh. The woman's pale eyes lifted. She looked at Harrison, slowly studying him the way you study something you almost recognize but cannot quite name. There was no fear in her gaze, no welcome. Only a quiet, distant patience, as if she had been waiting for something for so long she had forgotten what it was. "Do I know you?" Her voice was rough, worn by weather and silence. Harrison tried to speak. His mouth opened. No sound came. His lungs felt too small. His chest felt too tight. The name rose in his throat and stuck there, caught behind his teeth, like something living that refused to be born. Eliza. Owen stepped forward, small, brave. He knelt in the dirt beside the woman and held out the wooden horse. "Ma," he said softly. "It's me, Owen." The woman's eyes shifted to the boy. Something changed in her face, small but real, like a candle catching flame and then guttering, not quite holding. Her hands tightened around the cloth doll. "You're a good boy," she whispered. Owen swallowed. His voice trembled, but did not break. "You used to tell me that every night." Harrison finally found sound. It came out cracked and wrong, the voice of a man who had not wept in 3 years and was about to. Eliza. Her name felt like broken glass in his mouth. He had not spoken it aloud since the funeral, since the Reverend spoke over an empty coffin and the town sang hymns, and Harrison stood there in his black suit, staring at polished wood that held nothing, feeling like a liar and a coward and a failure. The woman frowned slightly, turning the name over in her mind like a stone. "Is that my name?" Harrison's knees almost gave. He locked them, stood rigid, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Yes," he said, and it sounded like a prayer torn from his throat. "That's your name." She looked down at the doll in her arms, then back up at him. Her face was blank, a canvas wiped clean. "I remember water," she whispered. "Cold. Darkness. I remember holding something precious. I didn't want to let go." Harrison's eyes burned. Shame rose in him thick and choking. He had stopped looking because grief felt cleaner than hope. He had told himself it was the only way to survive, that a man could not spend his whole life searching for the dead, that he had a son to raise and a ranch to run and no time for ghosts. He had built his life around the empty space she left, filled it with work and silence and the iron certainty that she was gone. And all this time she had been here, alive, lost, invisible, 15 miles from home. He took a small step closer, careful, like she was a deer that might bolt. "I'm sorry," Harrison said, and the words shook in his mouth. "I'm so sorry." She blinked at him. "For what?" "For not finding you." The woman tilted her head, confused. "You were looking for me." Harrison could not answer, could not speak. His throat closed entirely. He nodded once. Owen spoke instead. "Father searched for 6 months. Then he stopped." The boy's voice carried no accusation, just fact. But facts could be weapons sharper than any blade. Harrison flinched as if struck. The woman studied Harrison's face. "Why did you stop?" "Because I was weak," Harrison thought. "Because I was a coward. Because it hurt too much to keep hoping and failing and hoping and failing until hope itself became the cruelest thing in the world. Because I thought you were dead," he said aloud. "Maybe I was," the woman whispered. "Maybe I still am." Behind them footsteps approached. Harrison turned. Ruth Kimball stood there, her hands pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her round face. "Mr. Grant," she said, voice muffled, "I've been feeding her for over a year." Harrison stared at her. "You knew—" "No one knew who she was. She never spoke her name. She just sat here, quiet, humming. I brought her food. We all did." "A year." Harrison's voice went flat. "Dead. She's been here a year." "We didn't know," Ruth said again, desperate. "We thought she was just another lost soul, one of the ones who drift through. We tried to help. We tried to ask, but she couldn't remember anything." Harrison turned back to the woman, to Eliza, to his wife who was not dead, who had been sitting on this corner in the dirt and the dust and the cold while he slept 15 miles away in their bed. The weight of it pressed down on him like stone. "Do you remember me?" he asked. It came out quieter than he meant, almost pleading. She looked at him for a long time, searching his face. Her eyes moved over his features slowly, carefully, as if trying to match them to some half-forgotten dream. Finally, she shook her head. "No." One word. Small. Final. Harrison felt something inside him break clean in half. Owen reached for the woman's hand. She let him take it. "It's okay," the boy said. "You'll remember. We'll help you." "Help me what?" "Remember who you are." "Who am I?" Owen's voice was steady, certain. "You're our mother." The woman looked at the boy's small hand in hers, then at Harrison, then at the doll she held. "I don't know what that means." Voices rose behind them. People were gathering now, drawn by the commotion. Harrison heard them like a wave approaching, whispers building into questions. "Oh, my Lord, is that Eliza Grant? But she died. But we had a funeral. Did he know? Why didn't he find her? Poor woman. Poor man. Poor boy." A voice cut through the crowd. Firm. Steady. "Mr. Grant." Harrison turned. Thomas Bradley stood there, a man in his early 50s with gray hair combed neat and glasses perched on his nose. He wore a dark suit despite the heat. He worked for the county, some kind of social services. Harrison had never paid much attention to what exactly Bradley did, only that the man had a reputation for being fair and thorough and occasionally ruthless when he believed he was right. "Mr. Bradley, I need to speak with you. About her." Bradley nodded toward Eliza. "Not now." "I'm afraid it has to be now." Bradley's voice was calm but unyielding. "This woman has been living on the street. There are protocols, procedures. She'll need to be evaluated." Harrison's hands clenched. "She's my wife." "Can she confirm that?" Harrison looked at Eliza. She was staring at both of them now, eyes wide, clutching the doll to her chest like armor. "She's been through trauma," Harrison said. "She needs time." Bradley stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Mr. Grant, I understand this is difficult, but we have to consider her safety, the community's safety. She's clearly not well. She needs professional care." "You mean you want to lock her up?" "I mean she needs evaluation, medical, psychiatric, to determine what's best for her. What's best for her is to come home." Bradley's expression softened, but his resolve did not. "I hope you're right, but until we know for certain the county has a responsibility. You have 48 hours to bring her to Dr. Harlan for assessment. After that, if she's deemed unfit to care for herself, we'll have no choice but to intervene." Harrison took a step forward. "You touch her and I'll—" "Harrison." A new voice. Sheriff Jack Coleman, a tall man with a weathered face and a scar across his chin. He put a hand on Harrison's shoulder, firm but not forceful. "Let's not do this here." Harrison shook him off. He wants to take her. Coleman looked at Bradley, then at Eliza, then back at Harrison. Tom, give the man some room. Bradley did not back down. Jack, you know the law. I know the law. I also know compassion. Let them go home. Let Dr. Harlan see her. Then we talk. Bradley hesitated. His jaw worked. Finally he nodded. 48 hours. He looked at Harrison. I'm not the enemy, Mr. Grant. I'm trying to help. Harrison did not answer. He turned back to Eliza. She was trembling now, rocking faster, the humming rising in pitch. The attention. The voices. The crowd. It was too much. We're leaving, Harrison said. He crouched down, bringing himself to her level. Will you come with me? Eliza stared at him. Where? Home. I don't have a home. Yes, Owen said, kneeling beside his father. You do. With us. Eliza looked at the boy. Something in her eyes shifted. Not recognition, but something softer. Something that looked like trust beginning to take root in poisoned soil. With you. With both of us, Owen said. Eliza's gaze moved to Harrison. She studied his face again. He let her look, did not flinch, did not hide. After a long moment she whispered, Will you hurt me? Harrison's heart shattered. Never, he said. I swear to God, never. Slowly, so slowly, it seemed to take an eternity, Eliza reached out and placed her hand in his. Her palm was rough, calloused, cold. Harrison closed his fingers around hers like he was afraid the world might steal her again if he let go. He helped her to her feet. She swayed unsteady as if standing was an act she had half forgotten. Owen took her other hand. Together they began to walk toward Harrison's truck. The crowd parted. Some faces showed pity. Some showed curiosity. Some showed something uglier. A man Harrison vaguely recognized, a rancher who had lost land bids to him more than once, called out, Looks like Mackenzie found himself a stray. Another man laughed. Maybe she'll start begging for scraps at your table, too. Harrison stopped. Owen felt his father's hand tighten, felt the rage coiling in the man's body like a spring wound too tight. But before Harrison could turn, Eliza pulled her hand free. She looked at the men who had spoken. Her voice, when it came, was soft but clear. I know begging, she said. I've done it for a long time, but I never begged from men like you. The men fell silent. Eliza turned back to Harrison. Can we go now? Harrison nodded. He did not trust his voice. Together they walked to the truck. He opened the passenger door, helped Eliza inside. She moved carefully as if the seat might burn her. Owen climbed in beside her. Harrison closed the door and walked around to the driver's side. His hands shook as he gripped the wheel. The truck rumbled to life. Harrison pulled onto Main Street and drove west out of Sweetwater toward the ranch. In the rear-view mirror he saw the crowd dispersing. Bradley standing with his arms crossed, Ruth Kimball crying, Reverend Hart making the sign of the cross. Beside him, Eliza sat rigid, staring out the window. Her fingers never left the cloth doll. Owen sat between them, small and silent, his wooden horse in one hand and his mother's hand in the other. They drove in silence for the first 5 miles. The fence posts flew past. 1, 2, 3. Eliza's lips moved as if she were counting them. Finally she spoke. I used to count these. Harrison glanced at her. The fence posts? Yes, when I was... before. I would count them. 1, 2, 3. Hope sparked in Harrison's chest, painful and bright. What else do you remember? Eliza frowned. She strained, reaching for something that was not there. Then her face fell. Nothing. Just the posts. The spark died. Harrison focused on the road. Mother, Owen said quietly, do you remember me? Eliza looked down at the boy. Her expression softened. I remember your eyes. Just my eyes. They're kind, like someone I used to know. You used to kiss my forehead every night, Owen said. His voice trembled. And you sang to me. What did I sing? Owen began to hum. The same tune Eliza had been humming at the trading post corner. A melody without words, haunting and soft. Eliza's eyes widened. Her mouth opened. And then, as if her body remembered what her mind could not, she began to hum with him. Their voices joined, two threads of the same broken song. Harrison's vision blurred. His hands tightened on the wheel until his knuckles went white. He had to pull over, had to stop the truck on the side of the road because he could not see through the tears, and if he kept driving he would crash and lose them both all over again. He sat there with the engine idling and listened to his wife and son hum a song Eliza did not remember teaching. When the song ended, silence filled the truck. Heavy, sacred. "I don't remember the words," Eliza whispered. "That's okay," Owen said. "We'll find them together." They drove the last 10 miles in quiet. The ranch appeared on the horizon. White house, red barn, fences and fields, and the distant shapes of cattle moving like shadows. Harrison felt Eliza stiffen beside him as they turned onto the long gravel drive. Ranch hands stopped working to stare. Daniel Pierce stepped out of the barn, his face frozen in shock. Harrison ignored them all. He parked in front of the house and climbed out. Opened Eliza's door. She did not move. "I'm scared," she said. "I know. What if it's wrong? What if I don't belong here?" "You do," Harrison said. "You always have." Eliza's eyes swept from the man to the boy to the building behind them. Slowly she stepped down from the truck. Her feet touched the gravel. She took a breath, another, and then a sound made her turn. From the barn a horse was running, black as midnight, 17 hands tall, mane flowing like dark water. The stallion ran straight toward them, hooves pounding the earth. Harrison moved to block Eliza, but she stepped around him. She walked toward the horse, no fear in her movements. The stallion stopped 3 feet away, lowered his head, snorted once. Eliza reached out. Her hand touched the horse's muzzle. "Cole," she whispered. Harrison's breath stopped. "Yes, that's Cole." "He's mine," Eliza said. Not a question, a certainty. "Yes." Tears ran down Eliza's face. She pressed her forehead against the horse's head, and the stallion stood perfectly still, as if he understood this moment was fragile and holy. "I remember you," Eliza said. "Why do I remember you?" "Muscle memory," Harrison said, his voice hoarse. "Your body remembers even if your mind doesn't." Eliza pulled back and surveyed them, Harrison's weathered face, Owen's hopeful eyes, the house that waited. "Why can't I remember you?" Harrison had no answer. Or rather, he had too many, and none of them were kind. "Because I gave up. Because I failed you. Because maybe you don't want to remember the man who let you go." "You will," he said instead. "Give it time." Eliza nodded, though her face said she did not believe him. Harrison led her inside. The house was exactly as it had been that morning. Clean, cold, everything in its place. Eliza stood in the doorway, staring into the front room. Her eyes moved over the fireplace, the chair by the window, the quilt draped over the sofa. Something in her expression broke and reformed like water trying to freeze and melting again before it could hold. "I made that quilt," she said, pointing. Harrison's heart leapt. "Yes, you did. I was pregnant. I made it for—" She trailed off, reaching. For me," Owen said. Eliza sank to her knees. She pulled the quilt into her arms and pressed her face into the fabric, and the sound that came out of her was something between a sob and a gasp. I'm sorry I can't remember." Harrison knelt beside her, but kept his hands to himself, afraid any contact would shatter this fragile moment. "You have nothing to be sorry for." "I should know you," she said, looking at him. "I should know my own husband, my own son. But you're strangers. You're both strangers." "Then we'll start again," Harrison said. "From the beginning." That night Harrison made up the guest room. He did not suggest Eliza sleep in their bedroom. Did not suggest she share his bed. The distance between them was a canyon, and he would not force her to cross it before she was ready. He brought her clean clothes, a towel, soap. She stood in the center of the guest room holding the cloth doll, looking lost. "Do you need anything?" Harrison asked. "I don't know what I need." Owen appeared in the doorway. "Mother, I brought you water and cookies in case you get hungry." Eliza took them with both hands as if they were precious. "Thank you." "Will you be okay tonight?" Owen asked. "I don't know," Eliza said honestly. "Father and I are right down the hall. If you need us, you just call." Eliza nodded. Owen left. Harrison stood in the doorway watching her. She sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the old coat, still holding the doll. She began to rock, forward and back, the same motion she had used at the trading post corner, a self-soothing rhythm learned in the cold and the dark and the loneliness of 3 lost years. "Eliza," Harrison said softly. She looked up. "You're home now." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what home means." Harrison's throat closed. He nodded once and stepped back, closed the door most of the way, leaving it open just a crack. Then he walked to his own room and sat on the edge of his bed in the dark. He left the light off and sat motionless in the darkness. Just sat there with his head in his hands, trying to understand how the world could be so cruel as to give him back the woman he loved in a body that no longer knew him. At 3 a.m, Eliza screamed. Harrison was out of bed and running before the sound finished echoing through the house. He threw open the guest room door. Eliza was on the floor in the corner, pressed against the wall, eyes wide and unseeing. "The water," she cried. "It's coming. I can't breathe." "Eliza, you're safe. There's no water." She did not hear him. She clawed at her throat, gasping. Harrison started toward her, but Owen appeared and grabbed his arm. "Don't touch her," the boy said. "She doesn't know you. You'll make it worse." Owen walked slowly to his mother, knelt in front of her without touching. "Mother," he said calmly, "look at me. Look at my face." Eliza's wild eyes found Owen. "Count with me," Owen said. 1, 2, 3. Breathe. 1, 2, 3. Slowly, painfully, Eliza's breathing slowed. Her hands dropped from her throat. She blinked, and the terror in her eyes faded into exhaustion. "Owen," she whispered, "I'm here." "Where am I?" "You're home. You're safe." Eliza looked past Owen to Harrison standing in the doorway. "Who is that?" Harrison felt the words like a knife. "That's Father," Owen said. "He won't hurt you." Eliza did not look convinced. She pulled her knees to her chest and wrapped her arms around them. Owen sat beside her, not touching, just present. Harrison stepped back into the hallway. He leaned against the wall and slid down until he was sitting on the floor. Through the open door he could hear Owen talking softly to Eliza, telling her she was okay, she was home, everything was going to be all right. His 7-year-old son was doing what Harrison could not, reaching her, comforting her, being the anchor she needed. Harrison sat there until the sun came up. When he finally stood and walked back to the guest room door, he saw Eliza asleep on the floor with Owen curled beside her, the boy's small hand resting on her arm. The cloth doll lay between them. Harrison did not go in. He simply stood and watched the 2 people he loved most in the world, and he knew with absolute certainty that he had been given a second chance he did not deserve. Downstairs, Daniel Pierce was already in the kitchen making coffee. He looked up when Harrison appeared. "Boss," he said carefully, "we need to talk." Harrison poured himself a cup. "Not now." "Yes, now." Daniel's tone made Harrison stop. The foreman was not a man who pushed, but his face was serious, lined with something that looked like pain. "What is it?" Daniel set down his mug. "I need to tell you something, about why this scares me." Harrison waited. "I had a sister," Daniel said. "Maria. She was sick. In her head. She heard things, saw things." Harrison's stomach tightened. "My parents didn't know what to do," Daniel continued. "They loved her, but they were afraid, so they sent her to a facility. For her own good, they said. Daniel, she killed herself there. 2 years in that place, and she hanged herself in her room." The words hung in the air, heavy. Final. I'm telling you this, Daniel said, because I don't want Eliza to end up like Maria, but I'm also telling you that love isn't always enough. Sometimes people need more than we can give. Harrison stared at his foreman, his friend. What are you saying? I'm saying be careful. Be honest. Don't let your pride kill her the way my parents' fear killed my sister. Daniel walked out, leaving Harrison alone in the kitchen with his coffee and his guilt and the sound of his wife and son breathing upstairs. Through the window the sun climbed higher. Another day beginning, another chance to get it right. Harrison did not know if he could, but he knew he would try, because the alternative was unthinkable. He had lost Eliza once through weakness. He would not lose her again. Not to the county, not to fear, not to the water that still called to her in her nightmares. He would fight. For her. For Owen. For the family that had been shattered and was now impossibly being given a chance to heal, even if she never remembered him, even if he remained a stranger in her eyes. He would fight. The sun reached the hilltop, spilling gold across the valley, and Harrison Grant stood in his kitchen and made a promise to the morning that he would not break this time. Whatever it took, however long it took. She was home, and home was where she would stay. The morning after Eliza came home, Harrison woke at 4:30 as he always did. His body was a clock that had been wound the same way for 20 years. But this morning was different. This morning he lay in the dark, listening to the house breathe around him, and he could not make himself rise. She was here, in the guest room down the hall. Eliza, his wife, alive, breathing, lost. He had spent 3 years building a life around her absence, and now that absence had been filled with something harder than emptiness. A woman who looked like Eliza, sounded like Eliza, but did not know his name, did not know his face, did not know that she had once loved him enough to marry him in a field of wildflowers, while his hand shook so badly he could barely slide the ring onto her finger. Harrison sat up, put his feet on the cold floor, dressed in the dark. When he went downstairs, Owen was already in the kitchen. The boy stood at the stove scrambling eggs with the mechanical precision of someone who had done this too many times. 7 years old, and already he moved through the morning like a ghost, trying not to take up space, trying not to be a burden. "Morning," Harrison said. "Morning, Father." Owen did not look up. "I made enough for 3. She might not come down." "She will." Harrison poured coffee. Black, no sugar. He sat at the table and watched his son cook. The third chair sat empty between them. Not empty, waiting. The house seemed to hold its breath. Footsteps on the stairs, soft, hesitant. Harrison's heart kicked against his ribs. Eliza appeared in the doorway wearing the clean clothes he had left for her, jeans that were too big, a flannel shirt that hung off her thin frame. Her hair was still wet from the shower. She stood there clutching the cloth doll, looking at the kitchen as if it were a foreign country where she did not speak the language. "Good morning," Owen said. His voice was gentle, careful. "Are you hungry?" Eliza nodded. "Sit. I made eggs." She moved to the table. Not to the third chair, to the chair at the end farthest from both of them. Harrison watched her sit, watched Owen place a plate in front of her, watched her pick up a fork and stare at the food as if trying to remember what to do with it. "It's good," Owen said. "I promise." Eliza took a bite, chewed slowly, swallowed. Her eyes widened slightly. "This is familiar." "You taught Father how to make eggs this way," Owen said. "He taught me." Eliza looked at Harrison. He met her gaze and saw nothing there, no recognition, no warmth, just careful assessment, as if she were looking at a stranger who might or might not be dangerous. "Did I?" she asked. "Yes." "I don't remember." "That's okay." They ate in silence. Harrison could not taste the food. He watched Eliza eat with small, precise bites, and he wondered what she was thinking. If she was thinking. If there was anything left inside her of the woman who used to fill this kitchen with laughter and terrible jokes and the smell of burnt pancakes because she always got distracted talking and forgot to flip them in time. When Owen cleared the plates, Eliza stood. What should I do now? The question hung there. What should I do? As if she were a guest. As if this were not her home. Harrison felt something crack inside his chest. Whatever you want, he said. I don't know what I want. Owen touched her hand. You could come sit with me? I have homework. What's homework? The boy's face fell for just a moment. Then he smiled. I'll show you. They went to the living room. Harrison stood at the kitchen window and watched Daniel Pierce cross the yard. The foreman's face was troubled. When he came inside, he did not bother with pleasantries. How is she? Alive. That's not what I asked. Harrison turned. What do you want me to say, Daniel? That she's fine. That everything's going to be fine. She doesn't know who I am. She doesn't know who she is. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You have to take her to Dr. Harlan today. Bradley gave you 48 hours. That was yesterday. I know. And if Harlan's report isn't good, Bradley will act. Then we make sure it's good. Daniel shook his head. You can't control this, Harrison. You can't fix it by wanting it hard enough. Watch me. That's what I'm afraid of. Daniel moved closer, lowering his voice. I told you about Maria, about what happened. My parents thought they could handle it. They thought love was enough. And when it wasn't, they sent her away, and she died alone in a concrete room with bars on the windows. Harrison's hands clenched. Eliza is not Maria. No, she's not. But she's not well either. And you need to be honest about that. I am being honest. Are you, or are you so desperate to have her back that you're not seeing what's really in front of you? Harrison took a step forward. His voice went low and dangerous. Get out. Daniel did not move. I'm your friend, so I'm going to say what needs saying. You failed her once by giving up. Don't fail her again by holding on too tight. I said get out. Daniel left. Harrison stood alone in the kitchen, breathing hard, his pulse hammering in his ears. Through the doorway he could see Eliza sitting on the couch beside Owen. The boy was showing her his math homework. She was looking at the numbers with a furrowed brow, and then slowly she reached out and took the pencil from his hand. She wrote something on the paper. Owen's eyes went wide. Mother, he breathed. That's right. That's exactly right. Eliza stared at what she had written. How did I know that? Because you used to help me with homework all the time. You're smart. Am I? The smartest. Harrison watched them. Something in his chest loosened just slightly. She could not remember her name, could not remember her husband, but somewhere inside her the knowledge remained, the pieces of who she had been scattered but not destroyed. At 9 o'clock, Harrison told Eliza they needed to go into town. She tensed immediately. Why? To see a doctor. Dr. Harlan. He's a good man. He won't hurt you. I don't like doctors. I know, but we have to do this. Eliza's breathing quickened. Her hands gripped the cloth doll. What if they take me? No one is taking you. You don't know that. Harrison knelt in front of her, did not touch her, just met her eyes. I give you my word. No one is taking you anywhere. I will not let that happen. She searched his face, looking for a lie, looking for danger. Finally, she nodded. The drive to Sweetwater was tense. Eliza sat pressed against the passenger door, the doll clutched to her chest. Owen sat between them, small and quiet. When they reached the clinic, the small waiting room was packed. Word had spread. People wanted to see the dead woman who walked. They filled the chairs, standing room only, their eyes following Eliza as Harrison led her inside. The whispers started immediately. Is that her? She looks terrible. Poor thing. Poor man. What a mess. Eliza's breathing went shallow. She stopped in the middle of the room, frozen. Harrison put a hand on her back. She flinched. Too many people, she whispered. I know. We'll be quick. Dr. Raymond Harlan appeared from the back. He was a small man, 64 years old, with white hair and thick glasses and hands that moved with the careful gentleness of someone who had spent a lifetime treating wounds. He took one look at the crowd and frowned. The rest of you out. This is not a show. People grumbled, but obeyed. The room emptied. Harlan gestured to his examination room. This way, Mrs. Grant. Inside the room smelled of alcohol and antiseptic. Harlan had Eliza sit on the examination table. She perched on the edge like a bird ready to fly. The doctor moved slowly, speaking in a low, calm voice. "Eliza, do you remember me?" She shook her head. "That's all right. I'm Dr. Harlan. I've been your doctor for a long time. I delivered Owen." Eliza looked at Owen, then back at Harlan. "I'm going to examine you now, just checking your vitals, nothing painful. Is that okay?" She nodded. Harlan checked her pulse, her blood pressure, her temperature. He looked into her eyes with a small light. He examined the scar on her temple, tracing it with one finger. "Do you know how you got this scar?" "No." "A horse accident. When you were 16. You were barrel racing. The horse spooked and threw you into a fence rail." Eliza's eyes widened. "Barrel racing?" "You remember?" "I remember the pattern. Cloverleaf. 3 barrels. You have to turn fast." Harlan smiled. "That's exactly right. But I don't remember doing it." "That's okay. It's a start." He continued the examination. When he lifted her sleeves, Harrison saw what Harlan saw. Bruises, old and new, scars on her hands and arms, the evidence of 3 years living rough. Harlan's face tightened, but he said nothing. He helped Eliza roll down her sleeves and then turned to Harrison. "May I speak with you outside?" In the hallway, Harlan closed the door. His expression was grave. "She's been through hell, Harrison." "I know. I don't think you do. Those bruises, those scars. She's been hurt, possibly assaulted, definitely malnourished. She's showing signs of severe trauma, PTSD, dissociative amnesia, possibly more." Harrison's stomach turned. "Can she recover?" "I don't know. With time, therapy, safety, maybe. But she needs specialized care. I'm going to refer you to Dr. Sarah Chen in Cheyenne. She's a trauma specialist." "And your report?" "What are you going to tell Bradley?" Harlan hesitated. "I have to be honest. She's not well. She's not a danger to herself or others as far as I can tell, but she's fragile, very fragile." "Will Bradley use that to take her?" "He might try." Harrison's jaw clenched. "Then we make sure he can't." That evening there was a town meeting. Harrison had not been invited. He went anyway. The Sweetwater Town Hall was packed with nearly 80 people, far more than the building was meant to hold for an emergency meeting. Folding chairs filled the space. People stood along the walls. Word had spread fast, drawing not just townspeople, but ranchers from outlying areas. The air was thick and hot and tense. Thomas Bradley stood at the front, papers in hand. When Harrison entered with Owen beside him, the room went quiet. Bradley's eyes found his. "Mr. Grant, I didn't expect you." "I'm here to make sure you don't decide my wife's fate without her family present. This is a community discussion." "About my wife, so I'm staying." Bradley nodded. "Very well." He began. He laid out the situation in calm, measured tones. A woman with severe mental health issues, living in a home with a child, the potential risks, the county's responsibility to ensure safety. He did not say Eliza was dangerous, but the implication hung in the air. People spoke. Mrs. Patterson, the school teacher, stood and said she was concerned about Owen. What if Eliza had an episode? What if something happened? A young rancher that Harrison vaguely knew stood and said Harrison had never been present enough to run the ranch properly, let alone care for a mentally ill woman. An older woman said she had heard screaming from the Grant house in the middle of the night. The rumors spread like wildfire, each one less true than the last. Then Ruth Kimball stood. Her voice was steady and fierce. "I fed Eliza Grant for over a year. Every day I brought her food. She never once showed violence, never once caused trouble. She sat quietly. She harmed no one. The only danger she posed was to herself because we as a community failed to see her." Ruth turned to face the crowd. "I was homeless once, 25 years ago. I had nothing, no one, and a woman I didn't know gave me a chance. She didn't ask questions, she didn't judge, she just helped. That woman saved my life, So I helped Eliza because I know what it's like to be invisible." Her voice broke. "Eliza deserves better than to be locked away because we're afraid. She deserves a chance to heal." Reverend Hart stood next. "Thomas, I respect you, but this is not justice. This is fear. Eliza Grant has committed no crime. She is ill, yes, but illness is not a sin. It is not a threat. It is a call for compassion." Sheriff Coleman rose. "From a legal standpoint, there's no grounds for involuntary commitment. She hasn't harmed anyone. She hasn't threatened anyone. Unless we have evidence of imminent danger, we have no right to intervene." Bradley listened to them all. His face remained impassive. When they finished, he spoke. "I hear you, all of you, and I understand your points, but I also understand the consequences of inaction." He paused, looked around the room. Then he did something unexpected. He began to tell a story. 15 years ago I had a wife, Catherine. We had a daughter, Emily. After Emily was born, Catherine changed. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating. She would sit and stare at nothing for hours. I thought she was tired. I thought it would pass. His voice remained steady, but his hands shook slightly. One day I came home from work. Emily was 3 months old. She was crying in her crib. She'd been crying for hours. I found Catherine in the garage. She'd hanged herself. The room went silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. "I tell you this," Bradley continued, "so you understand why I do what I do. I didn't see the danger. I didn't get Catherine help when I should have. I thought love would be enough. I was wrong, and she died. And Emily grew up without a mother because I was too proud or too blind or too stupid to act." His voice dropped lower. "Emily is 15 now. She lives with her grandmother. She barely speaks to me, because I wasn't there when her mother needed me most." Harrison stood. His legs felt unsteady, but his voice was firm. "Mr. Bradley, I appreciate your honesty, and I'm sorry for your loss, but Eliza is not Catherine." "How do you know?" "Because Catherine was alone. Eliza isn't. She has me. She has Owen. She has this town whether we deserve her or not." Harrison's hands clenched at his sides. 3 years ago I gave up. I stopped searching. I told myself she was dead because it was easier than hoping. That was my failure, my cowardice. But I will not fail her again. His voice rose. "You want to take her away because you're scared. I understand that. I'm scared too. I'm terrified. I'm terrified she'll never remember me. I'm terrified I've lost her forever, even though she's standing right in front of me. But I'm more scared of what happens if I let fear win." He looked around the room. "If you take her from me, you will have to go through me. Because I am not the man I was 3 years ago. That man quit. This man won't." The silence that followed was heavy. Then Sheriff Coleman stood. "I propose a compromise. 30 days. Eliza stays at home with Harrison. Dr. Chen visits weekly for therapy. Dr. Harlan checks on her. I'll do welfare visits. If at the end of 30 days she's stable and improving, we drop this. If she's worse, we revisit." People murmured. Some nodded. Some shook their heads. Finally, the mayor, an old man in his 70s, called for a vote. Hands rose. The majority voted yes. Bradley did not vote. He simply gathered his papers and walked to where Harrison stood. "Mr. Grant, I hope you prove me wrong." "So do I." Bradley left. The crowd dispersed. Harrison felt a hand on his shoulder. "Reverend Hart, you spoke well." "I spoke the truth. That's the same thing." Outside the night was cold. Stars filled the sky like shattered glass. Harrison drove home in silence. Owen had fallen asleep in the truck, his small body curled against the door. When they arrived at the ranch, Harrison carried his son inside and put him to bed without waking him. Eliza was in the living room, sitting in the chair by the window. She had not moved since they left. The cloth doll sat in her lap. She looked up when Harrison entered. "Did they decide to take me?" "No. But they wanted to." Harrison sat on the couch across from her. "Some did. Not all." "The man, Bradley, he lost his wife." "Yes." "He thinks I'm like her." "He's wrong." Eliza was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "What if he's not?" Harrison leaned forward. "Eliza, you are not going to hurt yourself. You're not going to hurt Owen. You're not going to hurt anyone." "How do you know?" "Because I know you, but I don't know me." It was the most honest thing she had said since coming home. Harrison had no answer for it. They sat in the silence, two strangers who had once been everything to each other, trying to find a bridge across the chasm between them. The next week passed in a careful routine. Eliza woke early. She came downstairs. She ate breakfast. She sat. That was all she seemed capable of, sitting, watching, existing in a space where she did not belong but had nowhere else to go. On the third day she went to the window and looked out at the ranch. Cole was in the corral. When she called his name, the stallion ran to the fence. Eliza smiled. It was the first smile Harrison had seen on her face since she came home. "Can I go out there?" she asked. "Of course." She walked outside, slowly, carefully, as if the ground might open beneath her. Cole met her at the fence, pressing his huge head against her shoulder. Eliza wrapped her arms around his neck and stood there for a long time, not moving, just holding on. Harrison watched from the porch. Daniel walked up beside him. "She remembers the horse." "Yes, but not you." "No." Daniel was quiet. Then he said, "Maybe that's easier for her." "What do you mean?" "Animals don't expect anything. They don't ask questions. They just love you." Harrison looked at his foreman. "Is that what you think I'm doing? Expecting too much?" "I think you want her to be who she was, and she can't be that person anymore." "Then who is she?" "I don't know. But maybe you need to let her figure that out instead of trying to make her remember." Daniel walked away. Harrison stood on the porch and watched his wife hold his horse, and he wondered if Daniel was right. If maybe the kindest thing he could do was stop waiting for Eliza to come back and start accepting the woman she was now. On the fifth day, Eliza went into the kitchen while Owen was at school. Harrison was in his office doing paperwork when he heard the sounds. Cabinets opening, dishes clattering, the stove lighting. He went to investigate. Eliza stood at the counter with flour on her hands and a mixing bowl in front of her. She was making something. Her movements were automatic, unconscious, muscle memory taking over. "What are you doing?" Harrison asked. Eliza looked up startled. "I don't know. My hands just started." She glanced down at the bowl and the ingredients spread across the counter. "Pancakes," she whispered. "I'm making pancakes." "You used to make them every Sunday." "Did I?" She touched the flour, rubbed it between her fingers. "It feels right." She finished mixing the batter, poured circles onto the griddle, flipped them at exactly the right moment. When Owen came home from school, there was a stack of pancakes on the table. The boy stared at them like they were a miracle. "Mother," he breathed, "you made these?" "I think so." Owen took a bite. His eyes filled with tears. "They taste exactly the same, exactly like before." Eliza sat down across from him. "How is that possible?" "I don't know," Harrison said, "but it's a start." That night, Dr. Sarah Chen arrived from Cheyenne. She was a woman in her early 40s, Asian American with long black hair and glasses, and a manner that was both professional and warm. She sat up in the living room with a notebook and a kind smile. "Eliza," she said, "I'm Dr. Chen, but please call me Sarah." "Sarah," Eliza repeated. "I'm here to help you, not to judge you, not to fix you, just to help you find your way." "My way to what?" "To wherever you want to go." They talked for an hour. Harrison sat in the kitchen listening to the low murmur of voices. When Sarah emerged, her expression was thoughtful. "She's carrying a lot of trauma. The amnesia is her brain's way of protecting her from something too painful to process. We'll work through it slowly. But Harrison, you need to understand something." "What?" "She may never fully remember. The Eliza you knew might be gone." "I know." "Do you? Because I see the way you look at her. You're waiting for her to come back. And that waiting might be the thing that keeps her from healing." Sarah left. Harrison sat alone in the kitchen, her words circling in his mind like vultures. Was he holding on too tight? Was his love a cage instead of a shelter? He did not know. He only knew that he could not let go. On the 7th day the storm came, not metaphorically, an actual storm. Black clouds rolled in from the west, piling up against the mountains like a wall. The wind picked up howling through the eaves. Rain lashed the windows. Thunder cracked close enough to rattle the dishes in the cupboards. Eliza was in the living room when the first thunderclap hit. She screamed. Her body went rigid. Her eyes went wide and empty. "The water! The water is coming!" Harrison ran to her, but Owen was faster. "Mother, look at me! You're inside, you're safe!" But Eliza did not see him. She saw something else, something terrible. She scrambled to her feet and ran, out of the living room, through the kitchen, out the back door into the storm. "Eliza!" Harrison chased after her. She ran barefoot across the muddy yard, stumbling, falling, getting up again. Rain soaked her clothes. Lightning split the sky. She ran toward the river, the same river that had taken her 3 years ago, the same river that had given her back broken. Harrison's lungs burned. His boots slipped in the mud. "Eliza, stop!" She reached the riverbank. The water was high from the rain, moving fast and dark and hungry. She stood at the edge, staring down into it. Harrison caught up to her, grabbed her arm. She spun and struck him across the face. Her eyes were wild, unseeing. "Let me go! Let me go!" "No!" Harrison held on. "I won't lose you again." "I'm already lost. I'm already gone." Owen appeared beside them, soaked and shivering. "Mother, please, come back to the house." Eliza looked at the boy. Something in her face shifted. The wildness receded just slightly. "Owen, I'm here. I'm right here. I can't remember. I can't remember anything." "You don't have to remember. You just have to stay." Eliza's legs gave out. She collapsed in the mud, and Harrison went down with her, holding her as she sobbed. Owen wrapped his arms around both of them. They knelt there in the rain and the thunder and the dark, 3 people trying to hold each other together while the storm tried to tear them apart. Eventually Harrison got Eliza back to the house. She was shaking uncontrollably, her skin cold as ice. He wrapped her in blankets, sat her by the fire, made her hot tea that she did not drink. Owen sat beside her, holding her hand. "I'm sorry," Eliza whispered. "I'm so sorry." "You have nothing to be sorry for." "I'm broken. I'm a burden." Harrison knelt in front of her. "You are not broken. You are healing, and healing is not a straight line." But even as he said it, he felt the weight of doubt. Daniel was right. Sarah was right. Maybe he was not enough. Maybe love was not enough. Maybe he was making everything worse by keeping her here when she needed more than he could give. That night, after Eliza finally fell asleep, there was a knock at the door. Harrison opened it to find Thomas Bradley standing on the porch, rain dripping from his coat. "What do you want?" Bradley held up a folder. "I came to withdraw my petition." Harrison stared. "What?" "I saw what happened tonight. The whole town did. Word spreads fast. And I saw a man who refused to let go, a boy who fought for his mother, and a woman who came back because they called her." Bradley's face was lined with pain. "That's not what happened with Catherine. She was alone. I was at work. Emily was with a sitter. No one was there to call her back." He held out the folder. "You were right. Eliza is not Catherine. She has something my wife didn't have. She has people who will fight for her." Harrison took the folder. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Prove I made the right choice." Bradley left. Harrison stood in the doorway watching the rain fall. When he went back inside, Owen was sitting on the stairs. "Is she going to be okay, Father?" Harrison looked at his son, 7 years old and carrying the weight of the world. "I don't know. But we're going to try. Yes, we're going to try." Owen nodded. He went upstairs to bed. Harrison checked on Eliza one more time. She was curled on her side in the guest room, the cloth doll clutched to her chest. He stood in the doorway and watched her breathe. Tomorrow they would try again, and the day after that, and the day after that, however long it took, because that was what love meant. Not giving up, not letting go, staying even when staying hurt. Harrison closed the door and went to his own room. He sat on the edge of the bed and pulled open the drawer of his nightstand. Inside was a small water-stained notebook. Ruth had pressed it into his hands the day after Eliza came home, her eyes filled with tears. "She wrote in this," Ruth had said. "I found it in her coat. I thought you should have it." Harrison had taken it but couldn't bring himself to open it until now. He lifted the cover with trembling hands. The pages were filled with cramped, uneven handwriting, entries without dates, thoughts without context. He read them slowly, each word a knife turning in his chest. "Woke up, don't know where, can't remember my name. Day 5, maybe. People stare. Am I a monster? Woman gave me bread. I cried, don't know why crying. Sleeping in barn, horses don't judge. Tried to remember, head hurts, blood from nose, stopped trying. Old couple took me in, call me Jane. Jane, is that me? Mr. Miller died. Mrs. Miller said leave. I understand. I'm nobody. Made doll from rags, she stays, she's mine. Saw tall man today, sad eyes, felt something. What? Saw boy laugh, made me cry. Why do I cry when children laugh? Decided, stop trying to remember, remembering hurts too much. Harrison's hands shook. He turned more pages. The entries grew shorter, more fractured. Corner is safe. No one bothers. Ruth brings food. Ruth is kind. World has kind people. Saw tall man and boy, together. They walked past. Boy looked. Man didn't. I wanted to call out, but what would I say? I'm no one. And then, near the end, an entry that made Harrison's vision blur. Christmas Day, someone said. Families in church. Saw tall man and boy. They looked sad. Followed them. Stayed hidden. Big white house. Pretty. They went inside. I stayed outside. Watched through window. Tree, food, presents. They sat at table. Empty chair between them. Boy cried. Man held him. I wanted to go in. Knock on door. Say I'm here. But I'm a stranger. I don't belong to anyone. The last line was written in larger letters, pressed hard into the page, as if the act of writing it hurt. If I was somebody once, I hope they loved me. Harrison closed the notebook. He could not breathe, could not think. She had been there. On Christmas. Outside their house. Watching them mourn her while she stood in the cold, believing she was no one. Believing she had no right to come inside. He had looked out that window. He remembered. He had seen a shadow and told himself it was nothing. A deer. A trick of the light. He had gone back to comforting Owen, and he had never looked again. 50 feet. She had been 50 feet away. Harrison put the notebook back in the drawer. He lay down on top of the covers, still dressed, and stared at the ceiling until dawn came and painted the room gray. When he finally rose, his face felt like stone. His chest felt hollow. But his resolve was iron. He would not fail her again, no matter what it cost, no matter how long it took. She had waited for him in the cold and the dark, believing she was nobody. He would spend the rest of his life proving she was everything. The sun rose. Another day began. And in the guest room down the hall, Eliza Grant slept and dreamed of water and shadows, and a voice calling a name she could not quite hear. The morning after the storm, Harrison woke to the smell of cooking. For a moment, suspended between sleep and waking, he thought he had traveled backward through time, that the last 3 years had been a nightmare, and Eliza was downstairs making breakfast the way she used to, humming off-key and burning the edges of the toast because she always got distracted. Then he remembered. She was downstairs. But she did not know him, did not know herself. The cooking was muscle memory, not love. He dressed and went down. In the kitchen, Eliza stood at the stove wearing one of Owen's old aprons, too small for her, but tied carefully around her waist. She was making pancakes. The griddle sizzled. The coffee pot burbled. 3 plates sat on the table exactly where they should be. She moved through the space with uncertain grace, her hands knowing what her mind had forgotten. Owen sat at the table watching her with eyes that held more hope than any 7-year-old should have to carry. "Morning, Father," he said quietly, as if speaking too loud might break the spell. "Morning." Eliza turned, saw Harrison. Something flickered across her face. Not recognition, but not fear either. Something in between. "I made food," she said. "I don't know why. I just woke up and I needed to make food." "That's good," Harrison said. "That's real good." They sat together, ate in silence. The pancakes were perfect, exactly as Eliza used to make them. Golden edges, soft centers. The right amount of butter worked into the batter. Harrison's throat closed around each bite. Owen ate with the concentration of someone trying to memorize a moment before it disappeared. When they finished, Eliza stood and began clearing dishes. She washed them without being asked, dried them, put them away in the exact cupboards where they belonged. Harrison watched her hands move, finding their way home even when her mind was lost. "Eliza," he said carefully, "how did you know where the dishes go?" She stopped, looked at the cupboard, then at her hands. "I don't know. I just knew. Your body remembers, but my mind doesn't." She turned to face him. "Is that enough?" Harrison stood, moved closer but did not touch. "It's a start. What if I never remember more than this dishes? Pancakes. Where things go in a house that should be mine but feels like a stranger's. Then we build something new." Eliza looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were the same pale green they had always been, but behind them was a different person, someone shaped by cold and fear and 3 years of believing she was nobody. "Why are you so patient with me?" "Because I love you." "How can you love someone who doesn't remember you?" Harrison's voice went rough. "Because I remember enough for both of us." She turned away, went to the window, looked out at the ranch where Cole grazed in the morning light. "The horse remembers me. Yes. Sometimes I think he's the only real thing in this place." Harrison felt the words like a blow, but did not let it show on his face. "Then spend time with him. Whatever helps." Eliza nodded. She went outside. Harrison watched her walk to the corral, watched Cole lift his head and trot to meet her, watched her press her forehead against the stallion's neck and stand there as if drawing strength from something more honest than human connection. Owen came to stand beside his father. "She's trying." "I know." "Are we enough?" Harrison looked down at his son, put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "We have to be." The days that followed fell into rhythm. Eliza woke early, cooked breakfast, cleaned the house with the efficiency of someone following an invisible map. She spent hours with Cole, brushing him, talking to him, riding him in slow circles around the corral. At night she sat by the window with her cloth doll and hummed songs without words until exhaustion pulled her under. On the 4th day, Dr. Sarah Chen returned. She sat up in the living room with her notebook and her gentle questions. Harrison and Owen stayed in the kitchen giving them privacy, but close enough to hear if Eliza needed them. "Tell me about the doll," Sarah said. "I made her from scraps, when I didn't know who I was." "Why a doll?" Eliza was quiet for a long time. "I think I lost something precious. The doll was supposed to replace it, but it never could." "What did you lose?" "I don't know, but I remember the feeling, like something being ripped out of my chest." Sarah wrote something down. "Eliza, I want to try something called EMDR, eye movement desensitization. It can help process trauma. Are you willing? Will it hurt? It might bring up difficult memories. But I'll be with you the whole time." Harrison heard Eliza agree, heard Sarah begin the process asking Eliza to follow her finger with her eyes while thinking about the river. Left, right, left, right. For several minutes there was only the sound of breathing. Then Eliza gasped. Harrison was on his feet instantly, but Owen grabbed his arm. "Wait, let her do this." In the living room, Eliza's voice came out broken and strange. "I'm in the truck. It's raining. Owen is in the back seat. He's 4 years old. He's singing. A song about wheels on a bus. We're on the bridge. The old bridge over Silver Creek." Sarah's voice was calm. "Keep going." "The rain is so heavy, I can't see. The truck slides. I try to brake, but we're sliding. We hit the railing. Metal screams. Owen stops singing. He screams, 'Mommy.' The railing breaks. We're falling." Eliza's breathing went ragged. "Water. So cold. So dark. I can't breathe. The truck is filling up. I can't get my seatbelt off. Owen is crying, 'Mommy, help me. Mommy, I'm scared.'" Harrison's hands clenched so tight his nails drew blood from his palms. "I get his seatbelt undone," Eliza continued, her voice rising. "I push him toward the window. It's cracked, just enough. 'Get out, baby. Get out. Swim up.' He's crying. He doesn't want to leave me. I push him, hard. He goes out. The water takes him. And I'm stuck. The belt won't come off. I can't breathe. Everything goes black." Silence. Then Eliza's voice came back smaller, lost. "When I woke up, I was on the bank, miles downstream, alone, and all I could think was I lost him. I lost my baby. He drowned because of me." Harrison could not stay away anymore. He walked into the living room. Eliza was curled on the couch, shaking. Sarah looked up at him and nodded. "Eliza," Harrison said. His voice cracked on her name. "You didn't lose him. You saved him." She looked up. Her face was wet with tears. "What?" "Owen made it out. I pulled him from the water. You pushed him out the window. You saved our son's life." Eliza stared at him, processing. "Owen is alive. He's in the kitchen. He's alive because of you." Owen appeared in the doorway. "Mother, I'm here." Eliza stood on shaking legs, crossed the room, fell to her knees in front of her son and pulled him into her arms. "You're alive. You're alive. Because you saved me. I thought I killed you. For 3 years I thought I killed you." "No." Owen held her face in his small hands. "You're a hero, Mother. You're my hero." Eliza sobbed. Great wrenching sounds that seemed to tear up from somewhere deep and primal. Harrison knelt beside them, and for the first time since she came home, Eliza did not pull away when he touched her. She leaned into him and they held each other and Owen in the middle of the living room while Sarah Chen quietly gathered her things and let herself out. When Eliza finally stopped crying, she pulled back, looked at Harrison with new eyes. "You pulled him out?" "Yes." "Then you went back for me?" "Yes." "But I was gone." Harrison's throat worked. "The truck was empty. I searched for hours, then days, then months. Then you stopped." "Yes." Eliza nodded slowly. "I don't remember you. But I know you now. You're the man who saved my son, who kept looking even when there was nothing to find, who took me back even though I'm a stranger. You're not a stranger. You're my wife. I don't remember being your wife." "I know. But I want to try, to learn, to be something to you again." Harrison felt something break open in his chest. Not grief this time. Hope, raw and painful and terrifying. "That's enough. That's more than enough." The next day, Eliza asked to go back to Sweetwater. Harrison did not want to risk the stares and whispers and the weight of the town's judgment. But Eliza was insistent. "I need to go to the corner, where I sat." "Why?" "Because I need to say goodbye to that person, the one who sat there, the one who thought she was nobody." They drove into town, Owen between them as always. When they arrived, Main Street was busy. Saturday morning, people shopping, talking, living their lives. When they saw Harrison's truck, conversation stopped. Faces turned, watched. Harrison parked near the trading post, helped Eliza out. She stood for a moment looking at the corner where she had spent so many hours. Then she walked toward it. Harrison and Owen followed. Ruth Kimball came out of her shop, her face lighting up. "Eliza, you look better. I feel less lost. I'm so glad." Ruth hugged her carefully as if afraid Eliza might break. "We were all so worried." More people appeared, not crowding, but present. Reverend Hart, Sheriff Coleman, Dr. Harlan, even Mrs. Patterson, who had spoken against Eliza at the town meeting, approached with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Grant, I'm sorry. I was afraid. I shouldn't have been." Eliza looked at her. "Fear makes sense. I was afraid too." Thomas Bradley emerged from the county office. He walked slowly toward them, and Harrison tensed, but Bradley's face held no threat, only sadness and something that might have been admiration. "Mrs. Grant," he said, "how are you?" "Better. Not whole, but better." "I'm glad." He held out a folder. "I came to give you this officially. The petition is withdrawn. You're free." "Was I ever not free?" Bradley smiled faintly. "No, I suppose not. But now it's in writing." Eliza took the folder. Then, surprising everyone, including herself, she stepped forward and hugged Thomas Bradley. The man went stiff, then slowly brought his arms up to return the embrace. "Thank you," Eliza whispered, "for caring, even when it was hard." Bradley's eyes were wet when she pulled back. "Take care of yourself." "I will." Eliza turned to the corner, the place where she had sat for over a year. She knelt down, touched the ground. Harrison watched her lips move, speaking words too quiet to hear. When she stood, her face was lighter, as if she had set down a burden she had been carrying too long. "I'm ready," she said. They walked back to the truck, but before they could leave, Reverend Hart called out, "Eliza Harrison, a word." They stopped. The Reverend approached his Bible tucked under one arm. "I have a thought, if you're willing to hear it." "We're listening," Harrison said. "The river took something from you both. Maybe it's time to take something back." "What do you mean?" Hart smiled gently. "I mean you buried an empty coffin 3 years ago. Maybe it's time for a different ceremony, one that speaks truth instead of grief." Harrison looked at Eliza. She looked back. Something passed between them, an understanding without words. "When?" Harrison asked. "Today, sunset, if you'll have me." That evening, as the sun painted the Wyoming sky gold and red, Harrison and Eliza and Owen stood on the bank of Silver Creek. The water moved past, dark and cold and indifferent. The same water that had taken Eliza. The same water that had given her back broken. Reverend Hart stood with them, his white collar bright against his dark shirt. Daniel Pierce was there. Ruth Kimball, Sheriff Coleman, a small gathering of people who had known Eliza before and wanted to know her again. "We are here," Hart said, his voice carrying over the sound of water, "to witness an ending and a beginning. 3 years ago, this river took Eliza Grant from her family. Today, she takes herself back." Eliza held the cloth doll in her hands, the thing she had made when she had nothing, the replacement for what she thought she had lost. She looked at it for a long moment, then she held it out to Owen. "I held this when I couldn't remember your face. Now I don't need it anymore." Owen took it carefully. "I'll keep it safe." "No," Eliza smiled. "Let it go. Let it float away. Let it be the old me, the lost one." Owen walked to the water's edge. He set the doll on the surface. The current caught it, carried it downstream. They all watched it spin and tumble until it disappeared around a bend. "The past is released," Hart said. "Now for the future." Harrison reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box. Inside was Eliza's wedding ring, the one she had worn for 12 years, the one he had kept in a drawer, unable to bury, unable to wear himself, unable to let go. "I want to do this right," Harrison said. His voice shook but held. "Eliza Grant, I know you don't remember our wedding. I know you don't remember standing in a field of wildflowers and promising to love me forever. I know I'm a stranger to you." He dropped to one knee on the muddy bank. "But I'm asking anyway. Will you marry me, not for who you were, for who you are now. Will you take a chance on us? On building something new?" Eliza looked down at him, at this man who had searched for her and failed, and searched again, who had taken her back when she was nothing, who had been patient when patience must have cost him everything. She did not remember loving him. But standing here watching the sun set over the land he had built, seeing the hope and fear and desperate love in his eyes, she thought maybe love was not always about remembering. Sometimes it was about choosing, about saying yes when you did not know what yes meant, about faith. "I can't promise I'll remember," she said. "I can't promise I'll be who I was. I don't want who you were. I want who you are." Eliza's eyes filled. "Then yes, I'll marry you again." Harrison slid the ring onto her finger. It fit the way it always had. He stood, and Eliza surprised him by leaning in and kissing him softly, not with passion, not with the heat of remembered love, but with something gentler, something new. When she pulled back, Owen was grinning through his tears. Reverend Hart raised his hands. "By the power vested in me, and more importantly by the grace of God and the resilience of the human heart, I declare you husband and wife." Again. The small gathering applauded. Ruth wiped her eyes. Daniel clapped Harrison on the shoulder. Sheriff Coleman shook his hand. And as the sun dipped below the mountains painting the river gold, the Grant family stood together. Whole, changed, but together. The weeks that followed were not easy. Eliza still had nightmares, still woke screaming about water and darkness and drowning. But now when she woke, Harrison was there, and Owen, and Cole, and the house that was slowly becoming home instead of a stranger's place. She worked with Sarah Chen twice a week. The memories came back in fragments, a moment here, a feeling there. The day she and Harrison met at a county fair, the way he had looked at her like she was the only person in the world, the birth of Owen, the weight of him in her arms, the overwhelming love that had terrified and thrilled her. She remembered pancakes and laughter and fights about whose turn it was to muck the stalls. She remembered dancing in the kitchen at midnight to music only they could hear. She remembered being happy. But the memories were not complete. There were still holes, still blank spaces where her old life should have been. And slowly she learned that was okay. The woman she had been was gone. The woman she was now was different, shaped by survival, by loss, by the strange mercy of being given a second chance. 3 months after the ceremony at the river, Eliza woke before dawn. She got up quietly, not wanting to wake Harrison, went downstairs, made coffee, sat in the chair by the window and watched the sun rise over land that was hers, even if she did not fully remember claiming it. She heard footsteps on the stairs. Harrison appeared, hair rumpled, eyes soft with sleep. "Morning." "Morning." He poured coffee, sat beside her. They watched the dawn in comfortable silence. After a while, Eliza spoke. "I had a dream last night. About the water. No, about us. We were young. You were teaching me to ride. I kept falling off and you kept catching me." Harrison smiled. "That happened. You were terrible at first." "Was I?" "Worst I'd ever seen. But you wouldn't quit. You got on that horse 20 times before you stayed on." "Sounds like me." "Which you? The old one or the new one?" Eliza thought about it. "Both, I think. Maybe some things don't change, even when everything else does." Harrison reached over and took her hand. She let him. "I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For fighting. For choosing to stay. For learning to live in a life you don't remember." Eliza looked at their joined hands. "It's getting easier. Not easy, but easier." In the months that followed, Eliza found purpose. She began volunteering at Ruth's shop, which had started a program for homeless people in the area. Twice a week, Eliza sat with people who had lost themselves the way she had. She gave them food and clothes and the one thing she knew they needed most: someone to see them, to acknowledge they were human, to say without words that they mattered. One afternoon, a woman came into the shop. Young, maybe 25, dirty, scared, clutching a torn plastic bag like it held everything she owned. "Can I help you?" Eliza asked. The woman flinched. "I don't have money." "That's okay. Sit down. I'll get you something to eat." The woman sat. Eliza brought soup and bread, watched her eat with the desperate hunger of someone who had not eaten in days. When she finished, she looked up at Eliza with eyes that held no hope. "What's your name?" Eliza asked gently. "I don't remember." The words hit Eliza like a physical thing. She sat down across from the woman. "That's okay. I didn't remember mine either." "You didn't?" "No. For 3 years I didn't know who I was. I sat on a street corner and people walked by, and I was invisible." The woman stared. "What happened?" "Someone saw me, and someone else never gave up looking, and slowly I found my way back." "But do you remember now who you were before?" Eliza shook her head. "Not all of it, maybe not even most of it, but I'm learning that maybe that's okay. Maybe we're not just the sum of our memories. Maybe we're also who we choose to be right now, in this moment." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared." "I know, but you don't have to be scared alone." Over the weeks that followed, Eliza worked with the woman whose name turned out to be Sarah, though she only remembered that after 2 weeks of gentle coaxing. She helped Sarah find shelter, find resources, find herself. Watching her, Harrison felt something he had not felt in 3 years. Pride, not in the woman Eliza had been, but in the woman she was becoming. One evening, 6 months after Eliza came home, the 3 of them sat on the porch watching the sunset. Owen was reading a book. Eliza was mending a shirt. Harrison was doing nothing but existing in the moment. The air smelled of sage and approaching winter. "Father," Owen said without looking up from his book, "are we happy now?" Harrison glanced at Eliza. She looked back. "I think we're getting there," Harrison said. "What do you think, Eliza?" She set down the shirt, looked at the land spread before them, at the son beside her who had never given up, at the husband who had learned to love her twice. "I think happiness isn't a place you get to. It's something you build, one day at a time. And yes, I think we're building it." Owen nodded, satisfied, went back to his book. Eliza stood, walked to the porch railing. Harrison joined her. They stood side by side, not touching, but close. After a moment, Eliza spoke. "Thank you for not letting me go. Thank you for coming back. I don't think I had a choice. Something kept pulling me toward home, even when I didn't know where home was." "That's called love," Harrison said. "Even when you can't remember it, it remembers you." Eliza turned to look at him, really look at him, not with the eyes of a stranger, but with something deeper, something that was growing between them. Not the love they had before, but a new love, built on choice and patience and the courage to begin again. She took his hand, laced her fingers through his. "I'm glad I found you. I'm glad you let me find you." They stood on the porch as the sun set and the stars began to appear. Inside the house, lights came on, warm and golden, beckoning them home. And for the first time in 3 years, Harrison Grant felt something like peace settle into his bones. The past was gone. The future was uncertain. But the present, this moment standing on a porch with his wife and his son, and the land he had built with his own hands, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 6 months later, on a bright spring morning, Owen turned 8 years old. The house filled with people. Townspeople who had once judged and now accepted. Daniel Pierce with a hand-carved wooden horse for the boy. Ruth Kimball with a cake. Sheriff Coleman. Reverend Hart. Dr. Chen. Even Thomas Bradley, who had become an unexpected friend, teaching Harrison that sometimes the people who oppose you are just people who are afraid. Eliza stood in the kitchen directing traffic, making sure there was enough food, laughing at jokes living. Harrison watched her from across the room and marveled. She was not the woman he had married. That woman was gone, taken by the river and the years and the trauma. But this woman, the one who had survived hell and come out the other side scarred but whole, this woman he loved even more, because he had chosen her, and she had chosen him, and that choice was more powerful than any memory. After the party, after the guests had gone home and Owen was asleep upstairs with his new presents clutched to his chest, Harrison and Eliza walked to the sunset spot, the hilltop that overlooked the valley. They stood there as the sky turned orange and pink and purple. "Do you remember this place?" Harrison asked. Eliza thought for a moment. "I remember standing here once, with you. You said something about building a life." "I said I wanted to build a life that mattered. With you." "Did we?" Harrison looked out over the ranch, the barns and fences and cattle and land, the house where his son slept safe and warm, the woman beside him who had fought her way back from the dark. "Yes," he said, "we did." Eliza leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm writing again, in a new journal. Dr. Chen suggested it." "What are you writing?" "About now, about every day. So even if I forget again, I'll have a record, a map back to myself." "What did you write today?" Eliza smiled and pulled a small notebook from her pocket, opened it, and read aloud. "My name is Eliza Grant. I'm 38 years old. I'm a wife, a mother, a survivor. I don't remember everything about my past, but I'm living my present, and that's enough." She closed the notebook. "That's what I wrote this morning, but tonight I want to add something." "What?" "That I'm happy, that I'm home. Not the home I remember, but the home I'm building. And that's better. Because this home I chose. This love I chose. This life I chose." Harrison pulled her close. She came willingly. They stood on the hilltop as the sun set, and the stars came out, two people who had lost everything and found something better. Not what they had before, but what they had now, and what they would build tomorrow. Below them, the ranch settled into evening. Coal whinnied in the corral. A truck passed on the distant road, headlights cutting through the dusk. Somewhere in town, Ruth Kimball was closing her shop and thinking about the woman who had sat on the corner and the miracle of second chances. Thomas Bradley was putting his daughter to bed and feeling grateful for the lesson Harrison had taught him about fighting for the people you love. Dr. Chen was making notes about her patient who had lost herself and found someone new, and in Sweetwater in Carbon County in Wyoming, under a sky full of stars, a family knit itself back together. Not the way it was, but the way it needed to be. Scarred, changed, whole. Eliza Grant stood with her husband's arm around her shoulders and her son safe in the house below and the wind in her hair, and she thought about the woman who had sat on a street corner holding a cloth doll and believing she was nobody. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had learned that you do not need to remember who you were to know who you are. Eliza pulled back from the embrace and looked out over the valley one more time. The last light painted everything gold. The ranch, the mountains, the three of them standing together on this hilltop. "I used to be afraid of forgetting," she said quietly. "Now I'm afraid of forgetting this moment, right now." Harrison's hand tightened on hers. "Then we'll write it down, every day, every moment worth keeping." Owen, who had been silent, spoke up. "And when we have too many moments to remember, we'll just make new ones." Eliza smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes and stayed there. "Yes," she said, "we will." Below them, the ranch settled into evening. Coal's whinny carried on the wind. The house lights glowed warm and steady. Somewhere a door closed. Somewhere a life continued. And on the hilltop, a family who had been broken and scattered stood whole. Not the same as before, but whole nonetheless. Built from choice, not memory. From courage, not certainty. From love that had learned to begin again. Eliza took a breath. Let it out slow. "Let's go home," she said. And they did.